All right, so thanks everyone again. Real quick, today I want to share my experiences and observations from the industries on building the digital workforce for the disruptive innovation. Um, I'm Nilesh Kulkarni, and I'm principal consultant and digital transformation advisory with ThoughtWorks. I'm based out of Pune, and today I'm going to share the learnings from the teams and the organizations that I have worked with, and what is the connection of the workforce and the disruption. Okay, so right, so a lot of things around us are changing. The way the transformations are happening is changing. The way the businesses are run are changing. Right, so I hope you could correlate with some of the logos here. Something that has changed the world, whether it is Amazon, whether it is Uber, whether it is Airbnb, something, some innovators who have disrupted the way things used to happen before, whether it was Netflix and how it was before with Blockbuster and so on, right? So do we really need to also join this journey? Not at all. Like, survival is not mandatory, right? But that's on lighter note. Like, if you want to be in this business, we need to adopt, we need to embrace the change, and we really need to see what it is that we need to do and how do we do it so that we can remain competitive and in this ever changing dynamic VUCA world. And that is what everyone is doing, so getting ready for disruption, getting ready for innovation, and wanting to be competitive in the market. But while we do that, is it possible without skills? And that's the challenge that I have seen with the organizations I have been working with. As while we know the need and while we know where we want to go, but we are not ready for it. Our people, our workforce is not ready for it. Now, why does that happen? So few patterns that I have observed in this are, first of all, many organizations don't know what are those skills that will need to bridge this gap. When I say skills, it could be various type of skills, it could be roles, it could be profiles, but what it is that we will need so that we can take on the challenges, that understanding, that common baseline is not there. Um, Many organizations have also observed they're still approaching the hiring, which is a major portion of acquiring talent, right? Getting the skills and the knowledge within the inside the organization. Those processes are still traditional and they are not helping anymore to be ready, to be digital ready. Another big pattern I have seen with the organizations in last few years is, while the leadership is quite convinced about a change and they have the right people to drive the change, um, there are more than one reasons why existing members are resisting the transformation efforts. So when you have resistance within, then how could you take on the challenges and survive in the competition, because there are already enough challenges outside of the organization. And that's a puzzle that many of us are not able to solve. The next one that I have observed, there are many initiatives I have seen in organizations which are taking related to learning and upskilling, and everybody is allowed to learn something. We have a lot of subscriptions, we have a lot of forums to learn, but in spite of all those efforts, there are no tangible outcomes at the organization level. So we are spending money, we are spending time, effort, and whatnot else, but there are no business outcomes that are coming out of it. So something is wrong there. And the last one is, so as the businesses grow, the organization is also growing. So maybe there are some success stories in a part of organization and it is working well in a small group. I have seen mostly That's the software development part of the group, but there could be other groups also. But software development group is not the entire organization, and there are a lot of other parts, as well as the units that can grow horizontally and vertically. So when we are scaling as an organization, are we able to scale the talent development efforts as well to the all parts of organization? And that's also a major puzzle that is not able, we are not able to solve them, right? So what I'm going to do is share my observations and what has worked to take on these challenges, and we'll do a little deep dive into some of them one by one. But just to kind of brief. So first of all, we need to first know whether we have all the skills and the roles that are needed to help us through the digital transformation. And that needs to be an initiative, a strategic initiative to be taken up by the organization. The second area that you may want to focus on is changing the way we hire people, because that's going to be important part in which we will build a digital workforce, and it's not going to be the same how we used to do it a few years ago. To take on the challenges related to resistance of people inside the organization, there needs to be a careful thought and implementation plan on how do we take existing people along the journey. And so we talk about learning, upskilling, but if it's done in the silos and if it is not connected to some common goals, we might not get some tangible outcomes. So how do we get a learning organization culture built in, where we can take a benefit of a coordinated efforts of learning towards some common goal? That's going to be the next area. And lastly, what work for small teams may not work for the bigger groups, and even looking at various functions within the organizations. So how do we build the ability to scale these efforts and upskilling across the organization and be ready for it from an end-to-end perspective? So those are the areas that I have observed some of the patterns, and I'm going to share those stories with you. Let me start with the talent portfolio. So what is digital talent portfolio? Is it different from whatever roles we had in the organization, whatever responsibilities we had? Yes and no, because even the current existing talent portfolio has been evolved over a period of time. So we have always had that feedback loop and learned about the new roles, responsibilities, skills needed to do the job. However, the pace of change is exponential nowadays. So the process of building that portfolio is not going to be a one-time effort. Even if you do it today, we may need to keep looking at it every few months and see, are we able to take on those challenges? And those roles, skills are not only limited to the software development part of the organization. In fact, if it could be anything that helps the end customer in the value stream. So it could be finance, it could be marketing, it could be infrastructure, it could be any part of the organization. And whatever is happening in those areas where the companies are able to take on these challenges, whether it is beyond budgeting, whether it is agile HR or like extreme hiring, etc. Right? Are we enabled? Do we know what it takes to get there in multiple functions, and come up with that gap, right? So first of all, identify those roles and the skills that are needed. The next step will be to see whether we have those skills, or where are we with that skills. It could be at the depth of the skill also that matters. So we may have some beginner level knowledge in some of the areas, but do we have the depth? And sometimes it may be just number of people. Maybe do we have enough people with those skills to support the digital transformation? That could be a challenge. And so knowing the gap, knowing the current state would help us to plan this upskilling efforts, right? And the last thing is, if we keep expecting that we will learn over a period of time, we may get there sometime, but the question is, do we have that much time, or some other competitor will go and win the race, right? So we may have to look at other options. Should we acquire the people with new knowledge, new skills, which will help the expedite the digital transformation journey? It's not a one-way decision. Either just build it in your own current workforce, or start acquiring the knowledge from outside. There needs to be a delicate balance of how do we do this, and it has a lot of side impacts, right? The motivation on the existing people, the cultural integration of new people, and so there are going to be like thousands of factors that will come into play. But this needs to be carefully thought when we build and acquire the talent which can help through this transformation journey. The hiring part of it has been traditionally focused on the, oh, we have this position and this position needs these skills. So we will just do the interviews based on what the job profile, job responsibilities are. And as soon as we find the match, we'll hire them. But guess what? This is proving difficult to sustain over a period of time, because my responsibilities today might not remain the same a year down the line, or even 2 years down the line. So hiring for a particular skill is getting difficult. Even if I have perfect skill match today, doesn't guarantee that I'll be able to cope up with the changes a year down the line. So instead of that, the shift needs to happen in the way we hire for what is the cultural attributes and the learnability of the person, and whether this person will be able to support through this continuous learning and continuous improvement when we go through the digital transformation. So that's a complete shift from how we used to hire people. The second point that we often see, which is, and I've seen many organizations doing this, they want to hire people who are like them. And it could be good or bad thing. If the existing culture in the organization is very mature and it's already helping the organization to grow, then that's good, because then you are just hiring people who are like-minded, who are like you, and it's going to be a good match. However, there will be some organizations who are just trying to go through this journey, and they need some new culture adopted, and maybe their current workforce is not able to adopt it so soon. So in those cases, it is better to find the people who come with a different cultural background, who can bring their previous experience as a value add to your teams, and they will add to their culture. And status quo is not always a good thing, right? Culture can evolve for the betterment. So that's another way to look at hire people. If you keep hiring people with the same like-minded people, you're thinking, the overall group thinking, the organization thinking will remain at some saturation, and it will be a slow journey for the organization to grow. The other aspect where most organizations are focusing on in the hiring process is, assumptions about the knowledge skills is based on these certifications, whereas what we need, what the team needs to look at is the person have demonstrated experience, or given a situation, can that person demonstrate the skills, apply those skills to deal with the situation? That is much more important than looking at certifications as the objective evidence of the knowledge. Well, certifications could be a side benefit of, or a indication of a person has acquired knowledge, which is a good thing. What matters for the teams is the person able to apply that knowledge when a situation arrives? And the teams need to think about the way they do the interview process, and see whether the new person, the candidate, is able to apply those skills. Sometimes it could be that the teams doesn't know that how to apply those skills. They are, let's say they are hiring somebody who is completely um, a skill with which is not existing in the team. So we need to have that open mind where, we are not evaluating what we already know. What we are evaluating is, we have these challenges. How does the person uh, handle the situation and take us through the solution? So it's not always true in today's world that the interviewer knows all the answers and the candidate is just demonstrating the solution, and interviewer will be in the best place to evaluate whether that's the right solution or not. Those days are gone. Okay, so the next area that we should focus on is existing members, right? So as I said, there are many organizations where the resistance is coming from within, and that's challenging. So um, it's a change management. It's like any other change. People will resist change if they don't know the purpose, how it impacts them, who's going to help them. So let's say there are some profiles that are going through the change. You had some traditional roles, and let's say agile ways of working demand that they need to take on some new roles. Let's say that traditional product managers need to move towards product owner roles, or traditional people managers need to find a new place. Maybe they need to figure out where they can add most value. So who's going to take them along in this journey? How are we going to help them? So have some role transition plans. Take them in confidence. Their previous experience is still valuable. Take their inputs, make them partner. And a couple of organizations where we did this, we could see an extreme success. And over a period of time, the resistance was turned into a support mode, and we were able to navigate through the challenges much faster. So the last portion, when we say again change management, there will be new people with new thoughts, new culture, and there will be people who are coming with existing experience. They have been with the organization for lots of years. So how do we integrate them culturally, and so that they can work as a single team? We don't want two organizations inside an organization culturally, right? We want just one culture. Okay, so learning organization culture here. First of all, again, some experiences and patterns. The learning, technically, all the infrastructure is there and all the policies are there. But sometimes it gets deprioritized because of the current work pressures. Is that a good thing? The orgs needs to evaluate whether cost of learning and cost of not learning, how much you are paying by not learning. And that's very difficult to calculate, because you will only know if your competitors are succeeding faster than yours, and you keep wondering, is it because of my workforce inability, or maybe we are not learning enough or not learning fast? The conscious efforts towards setting learning initiatives related to the teams and organization goals is very important. If you want business outcomes, then all that learning efforts need to be tied to some kind of goal, whether it is at team level or org level, right? Multiple places. If the teams are working together and looking at it as a system thinking approach, whatever efforts they are trying, we're trying to achieve some goal, right? What skills do we need to achieve that goal? What do we have, what we don't have? How can we build those skill gaps? And how can everybody align their learning efforts towards that same goal? That will help to get some business outcome. Otherwise, if we just have a bunch of tools and platforms and say, okay, you have X number of hours and you can learn whatever you want, of course, individuals will grow, but is the organization growing? Is there a tangible outcome? We don't know. And last one is on celebrating the failures. So even to celebrate the failure, right, we need to have the room for failures, and how it is tied to learning. I mean, learning is, in today's world, and even in adult learning, right, it's not coming from classroom. It's not always coming from books. It's not always coming from reading articles. Learning comes by doing things, and there needs to be a tolerance for failure. There needs to be an appetite to try out few things. And the lot of organizations that I showed on the first slide, right? Those who are creating the disruptive innovation, they have a huge celebration of failure culture. And probably like a large part of their experiments fail, but they learn from it and they build on it, and that's how they succeed. And so this needs to be part of your day job. It can't be that your experiment is reserved for some extra hours after your day or on a weekend, right? Experimentation and failure along with it needs to become part of what you do. And the last point on how do you scale these initiatives? So first of all, you need a lot of change agents. You'll need a lot of change champions who can propagate this change, who can guide various people in upskilling, any other aspects which will help the digital workforce. It cannot be done by one person. It cannot be done by even a center of excellence within an organization. It's not going to be possible. So every unit, every team, you need a champion there to help you. The leaders in the organizations need to lead this by example, because people follow what the leader does, not what leader says. And if they see their leader is actually adopting new skills, new culture, and then the people will get more inspiration than just trying it out by themselves. And other thing to to scale is like every team doesn't need to reinvent the wheel. Every group, every unit, irrespective of there is a commonality in those communities or not, there is always something to learn. Just like we all are learning today, right? There is always something to learn from each other, and we don't need to reinvent. So leveraging communities of practice is another thing that we should keep in mind. And these three pointers would help the organizations to scale those upskilling efforts throughout the organization. And I have seen it working in the work, at least the orgs that I have worked with in the recent past. Right. So just to summarize these experiences, the organizations require a dedicated focus on enabling the workforce. We can't just go into execution mode of, okay, let's go through the disruptive innovation process and we'll be there. Because the innovation is done by the people. And if these people are having all that they need, then they will be more enabled, empowered to take on the challenges. Second thing is the organizations need to look at the new ways of acquiring and building digital talent. It's not going to be a one-time effort. Like, as I said, like the things around us change very fast. So what works today might not work a few months down the line. And lastly, treat this as a change management effort, creating this culture, creating learnings. All this needs to be prioritized as a strategic initiative that amongst the several other strategic initiatives that the organizations take on. It cannot be a side thing to be done or a deprioritized one of the things in the backlog for the leadership. It needs to be prioritized strategic initiative right from the board level to the various organizational units. Only then the companies would be able to respond to the disruptions. So those were my three key experiences, I would say, from the efforts that I had taken to build a digital workforce. And I'm sure there will be learnings and the tips from this group, and we will share them in the breakouts. But yeah, that's the experience that I wanted to share. Thank you very much. We will get into the breakout sessions now, and we will continue to learn from each other, and we'll add to what I have shared in my story and see what could be our takeaways.